great for the Department of Public Safety. We have some introductions to do and just a little bit of information to provide. And just so that everybody's aware, we are recording this because folks who could not attend have asked if we could do so for their review later. And I wonder if we could start. Oh, the Colonel got kicked out. Weird. He'll join us. The Colonel will join us as soon as he's able. Could we start by asking the legislators in attendance to introduce themselves, and then we'll do our introductions, etc. Troy, would you want to start us off?
Happy to. Hi, Troy Hedrick, State Rep-elect from Chittenden 15, which is Burlington, right around campus.
Thanks, Troy. Dara?
Hi, yes, I'm Dara Torrey, and I'm a Rep-elect from Washington 2, which is Fayston, Duxbury, Waitsfield, Warren, and Moortown.
Great, thank you. And did we have Kate as well?
Good afternoon. It's Kate Nugent. I'm the Rep-elect from Chittenden 10, which is a district in South Burlington.
Super. Well, just in the interest of being respectful of your time, we'll get going. If folks join in late, we can try and catch up with them. So my name is Jennifer Morrison, and I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety. We're going to go through some brief introductions and DPS 101, shall we say, and then we're going to leave ample time for introductions. So thank you for coming, and more importantly, thank you for your willingness to serve and take on this important but often thankless work in the Vermont legislature. We're looking forward to partnering with you to best serve all of Vermont. Before we jump into what is under the umbrella of DPS, I thought we'd introduce the people on the team. And as I said, my name is Jennifer Morrison. I was a career law enforcement person, having served in the Burlington Police Department and the Colchester Police Department. And I've been with DPS for 2 years, a little over 2 years, serving in a couple of different roles. First in the role that Mandy's in now as the Executive Director of Policy Development, and then as the Deputy Commissioner, and now as the Commissioner. And I am ably assisted by Deputy Commissioner Dan Batesy. Dan, do you want to give a little intro of yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'll also thank you for your willingness to join us today, and also for your willingness to serve. I am Dan Batesy. I'm the Deputy Commissioner. I am, like Commissioner Morrison, my background is a career paramedic firefighter. I joined the state of Vermont in 2016 as the EMS chief for the Department of Health, and then went through a couple of other stages of the Department of Health and joined public safety just a few weeks ago. So I'm still kind of getting my feet wet on this side, but I'm really happy to be here and look forward to working with all of you to serve the citizens of Vermont.
Thanks, Dan. We are assisted by Karen Carr, who is our executive assistant, and I think you have a meeting with her down the road as we get closer to scheduling testimony, etc. She will be the person that is our point person for scheduling anyone from DPS for testimony or other subject matter expertise. We have a policy team that incorporates our legal team and other people on the commissioner's staff. So Mandy Worcester, as I said, is the Executive Director of Policy Development. And we also have a training and policy consultant named Wilda White, who has joined us here today. And I wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity to just meet that part of the team. We are assisted by General Counsel Rosemary Gretkowski, who is a long tenured, she's been here through quite a few commissioners. And we have Assistant Counsel Tucker Jones. So the Deputy Commissioner, Wilda and Mandy, and the two attorneys comprise what we call our policy team. And the directors of each of the divisions obviously contribute to our policy development efforts. So we're going to move towards each of the teams, and then I'm going to have each of the directors give you a short overview of their division. The Department of Public Safety is comprised of 7 divisions, and on paper, you're going to see that there are 6 listed, which is for budgetary and other administrative reasons. But in reality, there are 7 distinct areas that we cover. First, and indispensable, of course, is the Division of Administration and Finance that keeps us all ticking. And then there's the Vermont Forensic Laboratory. We have the Vermont State Police. We have Vermont Emergency Management and the Division of Fire Safety, which you will hear in a minute is way more than just fire safety. And then the 2 that are lumped together in a division called Criminal Justice Services are the Vermont Crime Information Center and the Radio Technology Shop. So totally different things with different missions, and for administrative reasons, they show on paper as one division. But 7 different wheelhouses here, shall we say, all under the umbrella of the Department of Public Safety. And with that, I'm going to turn it over first. There was no particular order of play on this, but we're going to start with the Radio Technology Shop, which is led by Director Terry LaValle. So Terry, take it away.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for the invite today, and thank you for being here. My name is Terry LaValle. I'm the Director of Radio Technology Services. I've been with the department 32 plus years, in this capacity at about 20 years now. So Radio Technology Services provides two-way radio technology to the state of Vermont, not only for the Department of Public Safety, but the Agency of Transportation, Fish and Wildlife, and a lot of other agencies. And two-way radios are used extensively throughout the state of Vermont. It's the if you can imagine a police officer in the field communicating back and forth to dispatch or between each other, they're using a two-way radio system. So we support agencies in Vermont, departments in Vermont, and we also indirectly support federal agencies and municipalities across the state. So if there's an asset that we can leverage or share with a municipality, we do. And a lot of times we get a question, why do people use two-way radios versus cell phones? Cell phones are really designed for one-to-one communications. You pick up your cell phone, you call somebody. In an emergency situation, that makes it very difficult. So two-way radios can talk one to many, dispatch to many, etc. So it's really a technology that's used across the nation and extensively here across Vermont. We support more than 50 organizations in the state of Vermont using this technology. We have towers throughout the state that provide the coverage, the radio coverage for these organizations. We have more than 30 tower sites in Vermont. These include the remote mountaintop sites, and all the way down to dispatch centers like the 911 dispatch center. So it's not the 911 system, but it's the technology that we use to actually dispatch the first responders. We use technology that interfaces our radio sites on these mountaintops to the dispatch centers around the state. It's a combination of what we call microwave technology and fiber optic technology. We use this technology to interconnect all of these sites because of the lack of commercial facilities and the need for highly reliable systems out there. Our systems are all designed to operate when, like the Irene storm or the ice storms, to operate during those situations. So we design all these systems for it to be highly available and highly reliable. And our design standards across the state for this is typically less than 5 minutes outages per year per system. So they're highly reliable networks. We have a small staff. We have one supervisor, 6 technicians, and a couple of part-time people maintaining this network across the state. So that's kind of the two-way radio system that we provide across the state of Vermont. The other thing that Radio Technology Services does is it provides the telephone technology for the Department of Public Safety. So all of the phone systems, the sets across the state, we were providing that through our office. We have one person that maintains that system, works on it, and one part-time person in that area. In addition to those 2 primary areas, we also are responsible to ensure that the FirstNet program that AT&T and FirstNet committed to the state of Vermont is built and constructed in the time frame that they promised the state, and to ensure that the first responder community in Vermont has access to it and it works well in those areas. We also have a interoperable radio system, another two-way radio system in the state, and that's designed for all first responders so that there's a common radio platform that police, fire, and EMS can talk to each other on. That's called the Vermont VCOM system. So that's another system that we provide and we maintain on behalf of the state of Vermont. And that's really kind of it in a nutshell. We're really the two-way radio people. We maintain these systems, we repair the radios, we repair the network, and we ensure that the users of this network have highly reliable systems to communicate on their business needs.
Thanks,
And I would
Terry.
say that's good. Thank you.
It's wonderful. Every time, by the way, every time I hear the directors talk about their shop, I realize there's more that I am still learning about, even after 2 years of gaining insight. The depth and breadth of topics covered by the Department of Public Safety is huge. We'll move on to the Director of Vermont Emergency Management, Erica Borneman.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, and so glad to be talking with you all this afternoon. Some of you may have never put the two words emergency management together, and you're wondering what the heck do they do. Our role is primarily disaster response, recovery, mitigation, and preparedness. When a disaster happens in the state of Vermont, VEM's role is to coordinate the entire state level response to that disaster. Some folks will say, are you like FEMA? And it is kind of a little bit like that, although we have a very distinct role at the state level and a much different scale at the state level. So we're comprised of about 30 staff, and our primary mission is maintaining and ensuring that we are ready to respond to a disaster at the State Emergency Operations Center, which is also housed at the Department of Public Safety. That is where that's really the seat of disaster response for a large statewide disaster. Our staff don't just do response, although that is our number one priority. Like I said, we handle all of the sectors that make up disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. So first, we have our Homeland Security unit that manages all of the Homeland Security funding that comes into the state. And when you hear Homeland Security, it may conjure up certain images that I can actually guarantee you are only a sliver of what Homeland Security actually funds. Homeland Security is really about funding assets and capabilities that ensure that we're ready to respond to any type of threat or hazard in Vermont, including flooding, man-made hazards, school safety, things like that. Our next section is our engagement section, which primarily interfaces with local emergency managers, handling training, providing planning assistance, conducting local exercises. We have staff that actually go out and interface with local emergency managers on a daily basis. We also handle the school safety program under the engagement section in VEM, which is a link to the Vermont School Safety Center and our partnership with the Agency of Education, where we are proactively working with schools to be prepared for all hazards. Our operations and logistics section does just that. It manages the operations and logistics of the State Emergency Operations Center and any of the emergency management capabilities like the communication systems, our Vermont Alert emergency alerting system, our disaster management system, which is basically how we keep track of all of the missions and resource requests that come in during a disaster. Our recovery and mitigation section by far handles the most amount of funding. This is the area where when we have a disaster, they come to the forefront for community recovery and as well as stopping the cycle of disaster through hazard mitigation funding. You may have heard of some of our programs with through hazard mitigation, which is really making infrastructure improvements to harden certain infrastructure so that they don't fail in the next disaster. You may have also heard of the Flood Resilient Communities Fund, which is an ARPA program that also its only focus is to do floodplain restoration and ensure that those folks that are in the at greatest flood risk can actually lower their risk by buying out properties, removing defunct dams where they may pose a flood risk. So a lot going on in that section. All of the federal disaster funding that comes to the state after a major disaster declaration is funneled through that section. So they're very busy and busy handling their largest disaster that the state has ever experienced, which is the COVID-19 disaster. It's about a $500 million disaster under under FEMA, and it's definitely one for the books in terms of its scale. Our final section is the planning section, which handles just that, all state level plans that relate to disaster response. And so there is a state emergency management plan. The governor has promulgated that plan and directed state agencies throughout state government to have a specific role and responsibility in the response and recovery and ongoing preparedness to disasters. So that is the plan that really says how we respond to a disaster, and then how do we prepare for future ones. We're a pretty small shop. We can't do anything really without the assistance of other state agencies, and that's really our role, is to be the center of the hub, coordinating all of the other activity when a disaster happens in the state.
Thanks, Erica. I forgot to say at the outset that the Department of Public Safety is approximately 800 full and part-time staff. And as I've mentioned, there's 7 different divisions. And as you heard very clearly in Erica's presentation, the divisions tend to be broken down into sections or units. And as she was describing her planning and mitigation, or recovery and mitigation, planning, engagement sections, etc. I'm going to turn you over next to Colonel Matthew Birmingham, who is the director of the Vermont State Police. He is one of the only directors with a special title, but that's because of the nature of the organization. So, Colonel, I know you're having a little bit of connectivity issues, but take it away if you can.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. There's some issues here with the internet connection, so I hope I don't lose you. Welcome and thank you very much. I am the director of the state police. I have been with the state police for 24 years, and I've been the director for 7 years. So I've seen the state police go through a lot of changes over the last 24 years, and all mostly positive changes, which is good. We are 330 authorized sworn members, but unfortunately right now we're, as with many other entities across all sectors of the economy, experiencing significant staffing shortages. So we have 52 sworn vacancies, so we're operating at 278 sworn troopers right now. We have support staff, about 95 non-sworn support staff that work across many different aspects of the organization, from our PSAPs, which are our public safety answering points and dispatch centers, to our fleet, to our barracks clerks and records management. The state police is divided into 3 divisions. It is, and each division is commanded by a major. The field force division is what probably everybody thinks of the state police. It's the uniform division. It is spread out amongst 10 barracks around the state, and commanded by Major Jim Whitcomb. It also encompasses our special teams. We have 13 different special teams that are all available on our website, that you can go check out, anything from our underwater recovery team to our search and rescue team to our crime scene search team. So we may have 14 now. They keep adding them on me. Then we have the criminal division, which is commanded by Major Dan Trudeau. You've probably seen him on the news at most homicides. Major Trudeau runs the criminal division, which comprises of all of our detectives. The sections of the criminal division include our major crime unit, which is responsible for all homicides, homicide investigations, suspicious persons investigations, and officer-involved shootings, which is now mandated by statute for any law enforcement officer who's involved in a shooting. Then we have our Bureau of Criminal Investigation, which is also referred to as the BCI, which is our general detective unit. And it includes everything from narcotics to our SIUs, which are special investigation units that do sex crimes and child exploitation cases. We have arson. We have, I said narcotics. We have our technology investigation unit, which comprises of all of the technology around cell phones and Wi-Fi and internet and anything you can think of, the technology that touches any criminal investigation. So all the detectives are housed in the criminal division, and then the third division, which is the smallest in the state police, but not probably the most important, is the Sports Services Division, commanded by Major Kevin Lane. That division includes, the biggest part of that division is our Office of Professional and Development, which it encompasses professional standards, internal affairs, our training division, recruiting, and they're housed down at the Police Academy in Pittsford. Also in that division is our Emergency Communications Commander, who oversees our 2 dispatch centers and PSAPs, which you, I imagine, will be hearing a lot of this session coming up. We have internal affairs, I said, and our fleet division as well. So that is the state police in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer questions about any specifics, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. So thank you.
Thanks, Colonel. We're going to do the Q&A at the end. If you get
Okay.
booted off again, don't worry. I'll just make up the answers and let you know what I said.
I'm sure you'll do just fine.
I'm sure I will. Okay, thank you so much for that. We're going to turn next to the Division of Fire Safety, which is led by Mike DeRocher. Take it away, Mike.
Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for the invitation to be here. I've been the director for the division since 2012, and I've been with the division now closing in on 34 years. The mission of the Division of Fire Safety is to protect the public and the fire service through coordinated efforts in code enforcement, fire service training, public education, hazardous material response, fire investigation, and urban search and rescue. And so what I'll do is, we have basically 4 major units within the Division of Fire Safety. One being fire safety, the second being our hazardous material response team, urban search and rescue, and our fire service training. So under our fire safety division, we do all the public building permitting for construction. So we review plans for compliance with nationally adopted safety standards. Roughly $500 to $700 million in construction valuation, roughly 3,000 permits annually. 90 to 95% of those permits are issued within 30 days of receipt. And in response to the public building permits and complaints that we receive of alleged unsafe buildings, we conduct approximately 15,000 inspections, and those consist of both fire, electrical, and plumbing. We license or certify approximately 10,000 trade professionals, consisting of electricians, plumbers, all the propane and oil and natural gas technicians, fire alarm installers, sprinkler system installers, chimney sweeps, generator installers, and there's a few others in the mix. In fire safety, we also house 4 boards. We house the electrical licensing board, the plumbing board, the accessibility board, and the elevator safety board, and we chair all 4 of those boards. We also have a public fire safety education section, which consists actually of 1 full-time program manager and 2 part-time employees, and we're heavily involved in what we call community risk reduction, or CRR. And we also support many communities and local fire departments in spreading the fire safety messaging. We house the state hazmat response team. It is a team that is made up of one chief full-time position, and the other 25 members are temps, and they attend monthly training. And this team responds to all hazards. So examples of things they might respond to are chemical spills, events involving white powders, chemicals, unknowns, meth labs, propane and natural gas leaks, and some of these other type of emergencies. We have outstanding rapport with the fire service. We do a lot of training with the business communities to do pre-planning of their buildings. We also house the State Urban Search and Rescue Team, which specializes in swiftwater rescue, trench rescue, structural collapse, and confined space. And the team is comprised of 90 temps and one full-time program manager. We focus our priorities on the urban search and rescue to swiftwater rescue operations. That seems to be our main focus. We also have a fire investigation and explosion unit. We are partnered with the Vermont State Police, and when a fire chief requests an investigation of a fire or explosion or fire fatality, we partner with the state police to conduct those fire investigations. And then we are responsible for all the fire service training in the state. That's both for all the volunteers and the career firefighters. And as far as our infrastructure goes, we have 4 fire safety regional district offices, one in Waterbury, one in Williston, one in Rutland, one in Springfield. And we also have our fire academy located down at the training center in Pittsford. So that's just a quick 101 rundown of the Division of Fire Safety, and thank you.
See, I told you there was a lot going on in some of these divisions. Like, I see my predecessor's signature on elevator certificates and think, never in my life did I think I'd be signing a certificate for an elevator inspection. But here we are. So thanks, Mike. That was a great overview of all the terrific work you're doing. Did you want to give a quick plug for the calendar competition?
Yeah, certainly. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the Vermont State House, we are sponsoring a fire safety calendar award program during Fire Prevention Week in October. 3rd grade students from across the state submit posters with fire safety messages on the posters. They go through a judging, and we select 12 winners. And then another winner that is their messaging is put on the cover of the calendar. And then we also provide 12 runner-ups. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the House Chambers, we will be presenting certificates and a little bear to each one of the kids. Smokey the bear and Sparky the fire dog will be there. And it's just a great event. It's non-regulatory, right? So it's one way that we can give back to the public. The teachers come with the students and their parents. A lot of them, we find out, have never stepped foot in the State House. So it's really a symbolic gesture to host this program where we're teaching our young 3rd graders the importance of fire safety. So it's open if you want to attend. It starts at 1 o'clock. It lasts approximately an hour. We'd love to see you.
Thanks, Mike. Sounds like fun. All right, I'm going to pass you over to Dr. Tricia Conti, who is the director of the Vermont Forensic Lab.
So afternoon, everyone. So I have been at the Forensic Lab since 2005, so just over 17 years, and I've been in my position now as director since 2005, or 15, so 7 years. So our laboratory is in Waterbury. We provide a wide range of forensic services to support the criminal justice community here in Vermont. This includes examination of evidentiary items, interpretation and reporting of those findings, and then testimony in court if it's needed. So we will perform these functions for all local, county, state law enforcement agencies, as well as some federal partners like the DEA, ATF, FBI, also other state agencies like Fish and Wildlife, Liquor and Lottery. And then we will also take evidence from the defense if it's needed. So we are not a fee-for-service lab. We do all of our stuff for free as long as it's part of a criminal investigation. We have 26 positions on staff. Most of those are technical positions, so people that are actually working in the lab. We are broken into 4 main analytical sections, the first being biology. So that is, I'm not going to get too far into the weeds for the technical piece of this, but so biology is body fluid identification, DNA analysis, which includes DNA for casework samples, as well as we are the mandated state DNA database repository for the state of Vermont. So if you're convicted of a felony or a subset of misdemeanors in Vermont, by statute, you're mandated to have a DNA sample collected. So those come to us, we process those and upload those to the DNA database, which is housed and maintained by the FBI. Our second section is physical comparisons. So that's firearms, tool marks, latent print analysis. So a lot of that firearms work is weapons that are used in commission of a crime. So we will do function tests on those. We'll do serial number restoration, distance determination, if that is of interest for a particular case. Latent print analysis is obviously fingerprints. So we will do that evidence as well. The next section, which is probably our busiest one, which is not surprising, is our seized drug section. So if powders, pills, plant material is found on a person or through sale or trafficking, those samples are sent to us to weigh them and identify what substance is in those materials so that we can give that information to law enforcement. And the last section, which is the newest one to our laboratory, is toxicology. So we took over this function from the Department of Health back in 2012. So we will analyze blood samples for the presence of impairing drugs and alcohol that are part of DUI investigations. So in addition to testing blood, in Vermont, you can also have the option, if it's available, of giving a breath sample if you're charged with DUI. So those breath samples are taken using instruments called DMTs. Those are deployed in around 80 agencies around the state. So we maintain and certify those instruments. We train officers on their use and maintenance, and we will do analysis of those results and testify as to the validity of those instruments in court if it's needed. So it would be a lot of testimony and civil suspension cases for DUIs, as well as trials as they go down the road. So we do some other analyses that are not part of those that I just mentioned. So we help with image processing for state police, and we do some other things per statute. So in those DUI investigations that I mentioned, you are allowed to have an independent sample collected for analysis by a third-party laboratory. So we will receive those samples and send them out if the person that is convicted of, or the person that is arrested for DUI wants that tested by another agency that's not our laboratory, so they can have their own independent result. So we receive approximately 3,000 submissions annually from all of those entities that I mentioned earlier. So those could be as easy as, a swab that's collected from a stolen vehicle, or it could be a homicide case that comes in. So we do a wide breadth of types of analyses here. Some are very simple cases, some are very complex. So we are very busy, considering we're the only stop shop in Vermont. So we try to turn over samples as quickly as we can to meet the needs of the community. Most of our sections have anywhere from 2 to 6 people in them. So we are on the smaller side as far as state labs go, but our folks are of the highest level. They've got education and training years under their belts. And our laboratory is accredited. We've been accredited since 1998. We're one of the first ones in the nation that were accredited in various disciplines that we have. So we are a full service laboratory. And that's kind of a high level for the forensic lab. And again, later on, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Tricia. That was great. I should mention that in addition to the lab being accredited, Colonel, are you still on? State Police are accredited as well.
Yes, I am. I'm here. I had to switch over to audio only. I apologize. The service was taking me off. Yes, we are accredited by CALIA, which is the Committee for the Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies. It's an international accreditation agency, so yes.
And you've already met Director Borneman and Director DeRocher, and I should mention that they are just completing or just completed their terms as the national president of their professional organization. So little old Vermont representing at the highest levels across the country, with some of our directors taking on very large national responsibilities in addition to their responsibilities at home. And toward that end, the colonel was recently brought into the leadership of the state police the association that covers all state police agencies across the country. So he is one of their vice presidents now as well. And that speaks to the high degree of professionalism of all of our directors who, as Commissioner Sherling reminded me, are the subject matter experts. These are the career professionals, and the commissioners are temp workers. So with that being said, I'm going to pass you over to the Vermont Crime Information Center and Director Jeff Wallen.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. Again, my name is Jeff Wallen, and I'm the director of the Vermont Crime Information Center here at VPS, and I've been here just a little over 12 years, which sounds like a long time until I hear from some of my other colleagues that have put much more time and service in. So I appreciate that. Essentially what VCIC is, which is the acronym that we use here internally, and many of our community partners do as well, we act as the criminal history repository for the state, and what we really focus on is providing authorized information to authorized entities for authorized purposes, and that can be general crime statistics to the general public, all the way down to different law enforcement agencies conducting criminal investigations and providing very restricted and confidential data to those entities, and then a breadth of information within those two extremes that I just mentioned. We have 16 staff here in VCIC, so we're one of the smaller units, but we do interact with a large number of entities statewide, over 90 law enforcement agencies statewide, and several hundred community organizations. Quite frankly, the number grows all the time, so I've just gotten to saying several hundred. At this point, they be schools, healthcare organizations, childcare organizations, others that are authorized to conduct some type of criminal history check as part of their duties and requirements. The core function that VCIC serves is really serving as the criminal history repository for the state of Vermont. And so what that does is that is a real-time collection of arrest, arraignment, and conviction and information for individuals. So this is meant to, at the moment that a check is done, again, whether it's for a public purpose or for a criminal justice purpose, to provide up-to-date information about that individual as far as their interaction with the court system and law enforcement here in Vermont. And that may then be used in conjunction with other systems to help a full analysis be undertaken. That is often supplemented and integrated with our fingerprint checks section, which really handles fingerprints coming through, whether they be, again, for a criminal or a non-criminal justice purpose. So, for example, when someone is fingerprinted pursuant to arrest, that information comes through our office. And in the same vein, if someone applies for a teaching license and they are fingerprinted as part of that, that also comes through our office as well. And we see a fairly high volume of those, upwards of 20,000 of just the non-criminal justice fingerprints alone come through every year here at VCIC. We also provide crime statistics out to the community at large and to our research and criminal justice partners as well. And that's generated through a parallel system that really looks at incident-based data. So, for example, if somebody calls to make a criminal complaint that their house was vandalized, no one may ever be arrested, arraigned, or convicted for that, but the incident still happened, and we want to keep track of that and to be able to compare that with our states nationwide. And there's a number of ways that can be done. We also house within VCIC the Vermont Sex Offender Registry, which is a related function to our criminal history data set, and that really serves as a repository. We gather information on offenders, keep it updated, and then make it available to authorized entities and the public as well, as authorized by state statute as well. For that information, we actually then partner with law enforcement if there's actually any investigation or et cetera that needs to happen. We really serve as the repository for that information moving forward with that. So I think that's really at a very high level what BCIC does here. We interact with the community at multiple different levels and our law enforcement partners at multiple different levels. And to respect folks' time, I'll wrap with simply saying this. One thing that we do combat here, and I know others do as well, is what I like to jokingly but seriously call the CSI effect. People tend to think that data goes into a system and then it magically comes back out. And everything that we do relies on our staff. Information comes in, fingerprints, criminal history information, statistics come in, and somebody has to look at that to make sure it makes sense, to quality review it, and move it forward. So even with the high volume of data that we see coming through, there are humans at the center of that really make this process work and try to keep it as accurate as possible to keep our community and our law enforcement partners safe. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, Tricia, you've never had the CSI effect problem, huh? Okay, well, to bring us into the home stretch is the Director of the Division of Finance and Administration and everyone's best friend at DPS, Rick Hallenbeck.
Good afternoon. Thanks for attending this. Appreciate it. So in finance and administration, we provide a full range of business office services for all public safety divisions. We manage it through one office, my office, as opposed to each division having their own business office, which some agency structures are set up that way. I've been in administration for about 18 and a half years. I've been the director for roughly 3 of those. I have 4 distinct offices, as I call them: the financial office, policy audit and compliance office, the accounting office, and procurement office. I'll go over each of those. The financial office is made up of 2 units, the budget unit and the grant management unit. The budget unit is a staff of 3. They build and prepare the DPS budget proposal. They handle all the financial reporting throughout the year based on the budget that is passed by you, the legislature. We have about 26 different funding sources that we manage, from general to federal, including 18 particular special funds. The grant management unit is my largest unit. There's a staff of 7, and that's because they administer over 30 grant programs, most of them federally funded. We submit the grant applications for federal funds, manage the entire life cycle of a federal grant. We issue grants and sub-grant agreements to cities, towns, and other non-federal entities. We have roughly 200 sub-grantees, and we manage the process through final reimbursement and closeout. In the policy audit and compliance unit, we have the audit unit and the payroll and expense operations. The audit unit monitors subrecipients who receive funding from public safety to ensure compliance with all the federal and state regulations and guidelines for financial management. When you see my auditors, they're not there as a gotcha. Their focus really is on education. We monitor these subrecipients with the intention of helping them get up to speed on federal rules and regulations, and then if there's any compliance issues, we'll assist with them to get them into compliance. They also internally audit DPS processes to ensure that we have proper controls, and also they assist with DPS-wide policy development. The payroll and expense operations, I have 1 staff member dedicated to that who processes payroll for anywhere between 700 to 800 classified and temporary employees in a given week. And those 3 to 4 days are very busy. In the off time, she also handles the expense reimbursement process. My accounting office handles the day-to-day operations of accounting. They process roughly 12,000 invoices a year. There's a lot to the routing of invoices, identifying the correct fund sources where the invoices should be paid from. Items have to be documented as received or services provided, as well as a signature authorization from someone who is on our signature authorization list, such as the directors that are here today. They also enter deposits. There's about, I'd say, roughly 1,200 plus deposits a year. Some are simple, some can have over 30 lines. Some of the grant draws can have over 20 different funding sources within the grant that we have to track separately and draw separately from the feds. And lastly, my procurement office. I have 2 individuals in the procurement office. They handle all the purchase orders for the department. They oversee the development of the contracts there's roughly 80 contracts developed a year at Public Safety. And that office also tracks all of our capital and computer assets over $1,000. So they track over 3,000 assets located around the state, from offices to mountaintops. And they also handle the 100% physical inventory every May. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Rick. That was wonderful. So I think we're going to leave it there and let you guys ask us questions. I mean, we're good, but we're not so good that we could have possibly covered every one of your questions. If there's anything you want to know more about, or you're curious if we are involved in something, we're happy to answer it. Is this week all just like drinking from a fire hydrant? Is that basically what's happening here this week? Yeah.
I do have a question just about, I come from a prevention background, so a lot of this intersects with the work that I do. And I know it can be challenging, but also really helpful to understand, the cost to like our whole communities of, all the things that you see. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the data collection and analysis that you do right now. And if you are able to do more or coordinate it across agencies, what you might, how that might look.
That's a really big question. We collect data at various different levels in our divisions. Mike mentioned some of the data he collects about the time it takes to turn around a permit request, right? So there are certain data points that are happening inside each of the divisions. Certainly the Vermont State Police track very different data than what some of the other divisions are tracking. What Jeff is collecting is data that other people are reporting about criminal incidents. So there is a lot of data out there, and it would be helpful, I guess, in being responsive to your question, if you could just tell me a little bit more about where your line of thinking is going.
One example might be, this is very local, but when you look at like things that are related to alcohol use, for example, which could be DUIs, domestic violence, noise disturbances, things like that, and then where the source of where they got it from, it tends to concentrate around those areas. We've done a little bit of that locally. So things like that might just sort of get at like, we have like taxes, we have revenues, and then costs that are obvious, but then there's other costs, I think, that go along with things that are not as obvious, but would be helpful to understand.
Sure. So the Department of Liquor and Lottery tracks the place of last drink for certain crimes, DUI being one of them, sometimes other criminal cases as well, but I don't want to speak for them because they're not my wheelhouse. So there is some tracking of place of last drink for certain criminal interfaces. In terms of things that are reported to the police, some of what you referenced might be described as quality of life complaints. Noise, public urination, walk-by noise, and then, of course, obviously, DUIs, DUI crashes, and any other arrests. Those are all things that we collect data on. We have the data. We are in the process of building a public dashboarding that will not focus only on state police data, but that tends to be what people are most interested in, is what the law enforcement side of the house is doing. We also are in partnership with many other entities that collect and or use our data and analyze it in a way that we don't have the capability to do. So for instance, the Crime Research Group is the designated statistical analysis center for the state. So they produce They receive grant funding that generally flows through us, but they receive different grant funding, and they conduct studies and research reports on a variety of topics that are of interest either to us or to the legislature. They are the legislature's Statistical Analysis Center, or other stakeholders. So we frequently provide information to them and then receive back a report that analyzes certain pieces of that. We partner with the Department of Health and other entities across the Agency of Human Services to compare data as appropriate. We also rely heavily on data from the Agency of Transportation relative to crash data. So while we might be the ones who are out, the Vermont State Police and other local and county law enforcement might be the ones out responding to the crashes, it's actually AOT that keeps the official list of fatal crashes, crashes with injury, et cetera. So there, across the state enterprise, there are a lot of data sets that get shared or looked at for different reasons. And I guess for your purposes moving forward, you can ask us for anything you want. And if we don't have it, we will try to find you the right person or the right agency or division, department that has what you're looking for. Other questions?
Yeah, oh, that's a good question.
Great. Go ahead, Wendy.
Hi, I'm sorry, I may have missed this because I came on late, but thanks for all of the information and the data. It was really helpful. Will the department be proposing a plan or at least a summary of the situation with consolidated dispatch in this session or before the session?
So that work was legislatively laid out in the last biennium, and the first round of funding has been approved by the Joint Fiscal Committee. So we submitted an initial plan to JFC, and it was approved early November. I believe it was November 9th. And so the short answer to your question is no, we will not be presenting any proposed legislation because the process is already underway.
Okay.
And Mandy Worcester, who is on this call, is the Executive Director of Policy Development. She is sort of our point person for regional communications. So if you have specific questions or just want to kind of get a catch-up review of where things have been going,
yes,
you could reach out for her. All of us are first name dot last name at vermont.gov. And everybody's got their official name. So Michael is Michael, but we call him Mike. Mandy is really Mandy.Worcester at vermont.gov. So you can reach out to her and she would be happy to give you a primer on how we got to where we are.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. You're very welcome. I believe there was another hand up.
I took it down. I had the same question.
Oh, terrific.
Thank you.
Yes, it's a topic of great interest and great importance, of course. I would say just in a nutshell that after well more than 50 years of false starts and stops and repeated studies, all coming to the same conclusion, we are further down the path toward regionalizing communications and offloading what became a too much of a workload by consolidating down to 2 PSAPs, but being able to put right-sized regional communications that are in various parts of the state, but that also all have interoperability and failover and redundancy, so that we by diversifying the portfolio of regional communication centers, we will actually be making communications, emergency responder communications, more stable instead of the incredible over-reliance we have right now on our 2 state-run PSAPs. Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry. My name is David Templeman. I'm rep-elect from Brownington. So some of our, Barton specifically is looking to have their own police force and would like dispatch. Does that plan include a universal dispatch access for townships that want to start their own police?
that's the first time I've heard of somebody wanting to start a police department. What we've been hearing a lot more of recently is people who don't want to have their police department anymore. So let me say that there's no. What's that?
Yeah, we are in an unusual situation where we have high crime rates, but no police coverage. Barton discontinued their contract with the sheriff's department, which is unfortunate. And you know, they're now asking to start their own police force. And the one obstacle that they're having is that they can't find dispatch. So
that's, I believe that that would be an obstacle. So let me say succinctly that what we are creating through this regional communications model is capitalism at play. The historical backstory, to be very brief about it, is that there's been tremendous inequity in the way dispatching services have been provided to the state, and also many communities were paying an annual fee to the Department of Public Safety to provide that service. And for whatever reason, there were dozens of agencies that were getting that service for free. And once you start giving it free and then you're charging others, there's inherent inequity in the system. So we're trying to do away with that by creating multiple regional centers that are locally run, where the state is not telling anyone how they have to run their regional communication center. There are a variety of different types of governance that are already out there and structures that are already out there and working very well. If you look across the Lamoille County Sheriff's Operation, St. Albans City PD, Shelburne PD, the two PSAPs, Hartford PD, they all do things just a little bit differently. And the idea is that we will build a robust network of regional communication centers so that customers, like the town of Barton, can decide which type of governance, what type of fee structure, et cetera, is best for their community and join in that effort. I think that I'm sorry to say that I don't really know where Barton is, but I know you're up in the Northeast some. And there are multiple projects that have expressed interest in taking on more customers up that way. And I will also say that in the long run, the technology, and Terry, you can fact check me if I'm stretching it, but it shouldn't matter where you're located, because the technology, you can be dispatched from anywhere in the state. So see, I got it right. I love it. So the short answer is that right now, in the here and now, I believe you that you can't find anyone who wants to take on an agency. But I don't believe that will be the case in the midterm, say 3 to 5 years. It is our strong desire that the state will be completely out of the business of dispatching for non-state assets within 36 months. So
thank you.
I think Representative Dara, I think I saw you had a hand up.
Yes. Thank you. Let me try to lower my hand now so I don't forget to do it. I just wanted to express my appreciation to everyone for sharing about all the things happening over there. I've had the privilege of working with different arms in my work on, town planning, regional planning. So my question's actually about planning, in the sense that, I worked on a hazard mitigation plan for my town, for example. But I'm wondering now, with our focus on climate, and the new climate office, do you see an opportunity for some more integrated planning to happen on the community level? I'm just thinking of the hazard mitigation plan becoming, a climate resilience plan, for example, and how integrated planning would happen with so many players and agencies involved.
I'm tossing that one right over to Director Borneman from Vermont Emergency Management.
So happy to hear that you've worked on your local hazard mitigation plan. That is, as planning goes, it's one of the harder hurdles for local jurisdictions to overcome, especially folks that don't have the resources, and a lot of them rely on the regional planning commissions to help them. The local hazard mitigation plans are required by FEMA to receive federal hazard mitigation money, and so it would be FEMA that would be saying, oh, well, now these are a climate resilience plan. I actually wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of things, a lot of changes happening with FEMA, especially with the Biden administration focus on climate change. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some sort of change related to that. Of course, he has to come visit me while I'm talking. But we would not be able to make that change at the local level and change what the template says. At the state level, our state hazard mitigation plan is a very focused on climate change, and actually one of the central goals around the state plan is around climate change. We do a lot of work with the new climate office. Actually, it's one of our former hazard mitigation planners who now does the resilience and adaptation work at the climate office. So it's a small community, and it's even smaller in Vermont. So we do a lot of work with them, and I also co-chair the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee of the Vermont Climate Council. So there's a lot of overlap, a lot of integration that already happens, but I would love to talk with you more about ideas that you may have for some more effective planning that really that really takes into account the increased hazards that we're seeing with climate change.
Thank you. And then I just had a quick data question for I think it would be Mike. I noticed that trade professional certification is something that happens in your unit. I was wondering, do you have any trends that you could share or you look for in terms of like the number of electricians and plumbers over time in Vermont?
That's a good question. We have been staying pretty steady with our licensing and certification, believe it or not. So I don't see any huge downward trend of losing folks at this point. What we have done legislatively over the past 5-6 years is try to take down some of the barriers to make it easier for folks to obtain their certifications or to get their license renewal. We've done a lot of work on universal licensing. So we do have some folks from the military and some folks from other states that have valid licenses. We have allowed them to be licensed here through reciprocity. So that may actually be a positive impact there on why we see things steady as they go right now.
And of course, we really need to grow that workforce in the state.
Correct. And that is part of, I think the military reciprocity has been fairly good. But the new license reciprocity that occurred a couple of years ago, where we can accept licenses from plumbers or electricians from other states, if they're in good standing with the other states. The board still review their applications, but we have been very successful in having these boards issue these licenses to these folks without testing. So they do not take the Vermont test. They get their license issued through reciprocity.
That's great
So
to hear.
we've been
Thank you.
supportive of that. And I will say it hasn't come easy, right? We have had to give some direction to the boards. But that's behind us at this point.
Good to hear.
Another example might be, I'll just toss this out. We have partnered with Building and General Services. They are initiating an apprenticeship program where they have students who are interested in plumbing or electrical work. They're actually riding with our inspectors as part of an apprenticeship program to actually see the trade in action out in the field. So they ride with our electrical inspector and plumbing inspectors. I can't tell you the data on that yet because this is something that just unfolded within the past month. But we are supporting that initiative there as well.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions for us? In the days ahead, as you sift through everything you're learning in your onboarding, we are totally here for you for questions. There is no question that if we can't answer it, we'll try to point you to our colleagues in state government who can. What you get here at the Department of Public Safety is a very, I'll say, experienced, without insulting anyone, a very experienced crowd of directors who really do have tremendous institutional knowledge. And of course, we intersect daily with our partners across other parts of state government. So if you're stymied and don't know where to go, send us a question and we'll do our very best to do some wayfinding for you. And obviously, we're open for questions if something comes up as you carry out your work.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time to be here. Mandy, I think you can stop the recording and we'll ring off. But thanks so much, everyone.